council meeting, I sat in that chair next.
Yvette, are you ready? Okay. It's 2:35. We'll call the meeting to order.
Here.
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 One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll start with a comment about public appearances. Under the Brown Act, public comment for matters on the agenda must relate to that agenda item, and public comments for matters not on the agenda must relate to the subject matter jurisdiction of this body. Hateful, violent, threatening speech is impermissible public comment as it disrupts the conduct of the public meeting. This is a warning that if a member of the public attending this meeting remotely violates the Brown Act by failing to comply with these requirements of the Brown Act, then that speaker will be muted. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern not on the agenda during public appearances. Each person's comment shall be limited to 3 minutes or is otherwise established by the commission. Matters not appearing on the commission's agenda will not receive action at this meeting but may be referred to staff for a future meeting. Persons are not required to give their names, but it is helpful for speakers to state their names so that they may be identified in the minutes of the meeting. And with that, we will move to public appearances. Do we have anybody that would like to make a public comment before we get started today?
Workshop and so forth. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie. Are there any other public comments? Do we have anybody online?
Maria, go ahead. Hi, this is Maria Sutherland with Friends of Carmel Forest. And I just wanted to offer an invitation. We're having a tree walk and lecture with Dr. Matt Ritter on Saturday, July 19th. The tree walk starts at 10 a.m. in Mission Trail. It goes for about an hour and a half. And then we're having a separate lecture, book signing, and lunch at Forest Theater at 12. He's a really engaging speaker, one of the foremost experts on trees in California, and he'll be signing his new book, California Trees, A Field Guide to Native Species. So it's a really great opportunity for everyone to learn more about California trees in a really fun and hands-on way. So I hope you all will join us. Thank you.
No one else online.
Thank you. Okay, and then were there any announcements today?
Nothing official, just that we're working through the drafts, the edits to the draft of the forest master plan, and should be ready with that soon to schedule the working group session coming up. Right, Ken?
Correct. We're looking around September timeframe to start that up, the committee, and working forward. And I'd like to see, personally, my personal goal is to try to see us get this to the finish line before the end of the fiscal year. So we have something good, solid, tangent, and usable, but also gone through the CEQA process.
Yeah, and that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Our next item, we have 2 items of extraordinary business today. The first is the election of our commission chair and vice chair for the new fiscal year that just started a few days ago. So with on the commission chair position, that'll be the position that we elect first in terms of process. And so we'll take nominations and
Nominate Tamara as
chair. And I'll second that nomination.
Commissioner Berling,
Yes.
Chair Brezoczky,
Yes.
Commissioner Michie,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner Rutta.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations to our new chair.
Thank you. Tamara, we look forward to you sitting here next meeting. And now we'll move to the vice chair position. Do we have any nominations for the vice chair?
I guess nobody's speaking up.
Yeah, would you like to? Would you want me to?
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, we have a very qualified team of commissioners here. I know we have a couple of new people, and we have a person who has served in this role in the past. And I would like to nominate Kelly for this position.
I second.
Oh,
Yvette, did you catch the second?
No.
Second, I second.
Commissioner Berling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brezoczky,
Yes.
Chair Michie,
yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner Rutta.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations to our new co-chair.
Done.
Thank you. I think it's great that we have such an active commission, and I think all of our commissioners have all taken the initiative to be involved in a lot of the important areas of projects for our commission. So I think we do this all collaboratively, and I think we set a good example for the city in sharing and rotating our leadership on the Forest and Beach Commission. So thank you for your support. The second topic of extraordinary business that we had today was for just to have an open discussion. I know this is the first time we've actually been able to speak in a public forum, but to talk about as a commission what some of our goals for the Forest and Beach Commission might be. And I thought it would be helpful to talk about this maybe in two parts, the forest and then the beach is two separate areas. I think this is something that our new chair will take up as we go forward in the next coming months. But this is probably the first of a few conversations that might take us to align on some priorities for our commission. The goal of this conversation was to just give us a chance to talk about what are the things that we perceive to be important priorities. And if we did come to consensus as a commission, to be able to share that with the city council for their alignment. The goal here is not to establish separate priorities from our city council or to be operating, independent of our city council at all, but rather in support of our city council and city staff and the commission so that we could maybe get more attention to some of the things that we feel are important.
Was it Commissioner Brezoczky now, or is it still Chair Brezoczky?
Doesn't matter. It's either.
I just have, just with clarification, is this for the calendar, the fiscal year, or just in general? Big,
I think for the upcoming fiscal year, it's kind of I think it's nice to sort of, for us as a commission, to perhaps pick some things that we might be able to advance in the next fiscal. Some of them may but not be possible within a fiscal year. I'd leave that open to discussion if people have thoughts about that. But I would say there are some things that we can probably, if we take the initiative that we can draw attention to. One example I'll give is, for example, the deferred tree maintenance 2 years ago, when we worked collaboratively with city staff to get more resource, to support the argument, the basis for having more resources come into forestry for that, right? So I would say another example is clearly within the forestry area. The forest master plan is on the list, right? Like that's something that we're actively working. But everything in the forest master plan, I don't think has to wait until we have the plan developed. I think in the past, there was sort of a feeling, former leadership that said, oh, we can't do anything until we have the plan done. But now, I think, for example, having the first discussion about tree fines today, Justin, that you've been preparing for a month or two is super helpful, right? Because we could we may be able to come up with some good ideas on fines that we could take to city council that will get obviously embedded in the master plan, but things that we can tackle in advance. So the tree fines is a good example. Another suggestion I had was in the wildfire guidance area. We've all received in the mail, the new CWPP guidelines. We're starting to get questions or queries from residents about that. There's a difference between compliance today and compliance 3 years from now, which is what has to be in compliance in 3 years versus today. And that may be another topic I would be interested in seeing us potentially put some attention to. I think it would be helpful just to hear brainstorming from all the commissioners, though, if you have ideas or topics.
Can I also provide, one of the things I was just sitting back and looking at is what do we need at Public Works, help with commission, and you nailed it right on the head, the forest master plan, definitely. And I started writing out, in general, just the beach and forest ordinances and policies. And as, we're talking about fines, all those things that fall under that, like re-looking at it, refreshing it, and bring it up to, 2025. And you talked about, the CWPP, and as we're working with Monterey Fire on developing a fire defense plan with them, and we've got a good start on that with them already, but working with the commission on tightening that up and stuff. And also tree palette, what is the trees, let's put this in stone about what it is that keeps Carmel. But also, thinking about prehistoric trajectory of the survivability of trees in our communities.
I'd like to see us thinking of the trees. I'd like to see us looking at the balance again. We've somewhat lost the balance. We used to have, it is Carmel-by-the-Sea. We used to have a balance between the views of the ocean and the trees. And beginning in the late 20th century, actually, trees became extremely important to a group that had formed itself. And I think that we need to look at that again and decide what really makes Carmel Carmel. It isn't the trees. It's the trees are a part, but there's other parts, and I think we sometimes don't look at the other parts.
I have a comment, if I could, about the beach.
So can you hold it just for a second?
Sure,
I thought
let's stay
let's
on
cover the
forest.
beach. Let's cover the forest, and
Okay.
then let's talk about the beach.
So I guess
Yeah.
my comment on the forest and is a little bit about the fire management plan and integrating that into everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big deal because, well, we know why, but I'm hearing it a lot from just people, that that's a big deal. Are we working it into a forest plan that also then is fire effective? And I think that's going to be a huge goal for everybody coming up.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got two,
Okay. good.
specifically the forest. One, I just want to echo what Ken said. I wrote down, have a vetted and approved forest management plan by Q1 of 2026. I don't think we can wait. So I just want to second that. The second item, and this is kind of anecdotal, I just went through, I dodged a bullet with my homeowner's insurance. At first, Safeco said they were canceling my insurance. I got in contact with my insurance agent. Turned out it was, I think they had some bad pictures of my house, okay? And it actually wasn't about fire danger, but anyway, in talking with my insurance broker, he made a comment to me, because he knows I'm on Forest and Beach, and he said, I have at least one customer who had their policy canceled because a tree was too close to their house. So this is going to come up in spades in the next 6 months to 2 years. Insurance companies canceling policies due to trees close to the house. And I think it would be really good for us to get on top of that and start understanding what that means, crafting a plan, if you will, on how we're going to address this, along with city council, et cetera, of course. Because this is going to hit us in spades real soon.
Do you see that as something that could be integrated with like the fire management planning, or do you see it as a separate, like if,
I don't
separate
know.
working item?
I don't know right now. All I can tell you is that insurance companies are remodeling their risk and premium and stuff. And this is going to be happening. So in the next 6 months, I wouldn't be surprised if we see 25, 30 people, saying, I'm getting my homeowner's insurance canceled because this tree is too close. I want to cut it down. And I think if we don't have a consistent strategy on how we address this, rules and regs, so to speak, we're going to come across as subjective and inconsistent, and that's going to be bad. And it probably means we have to reach out to the fire, wildfire, and any other groups, et cetera, to figure this out.
And can I, just tying into that, is the planning commission also kind of involved with this also? Because obviously if you're going to get a house redone and it's next to a tree, they're going to be involved in some of this too. So I assume they're a little bit involved with the tree management kind of, or no?
A little bit, but I think paying more attention to some of the building code, like
Yeah.
the building requirements more than the trees. But it certainly makes sense for the city to have a cohesive.
They have
effort.
some
Yep.
oversight. So for example, if we approved trees to be cut down or not to be cut down, they could potentially reverse at when they hear it and see it, what we've said. Now, people have rights. They can actually bring it back to us again if they don't agree. If, for example, if they said no to a tree that we said yes, that could be cut down. And they're the ones who look at the understory more than we do. So at what sorts of design, how close you're putting it as time goes. Yeah, and even just all of the understory, if you've read sort of the current code that's going to be coming through. Is it 49? Is that what the new policy is for the state? I think is that.
The landscape plans go
The
through
landscape plan
planning commission.
is going to come
As a planning
into
department.
effect now too, and it all sort of intertwines, yeah. But they do have, to answer your question, yes, they do have some say. We both sort of have say. There's things that we've approved or not approved, and we thought, well, it's going to planning, so we'll get a second set of eyes on it. To answer your
And
question.
in terms of fire hardening, they have a lot of say in that, and like metal roofs, which is an issue. It's a topic. And then going forward, it's going to be beyond that, like this hot potato that's going to explode in a couple of years with wooden fences touching houses, wooden siding, anything wood is bad, according to the fire code, so.
Were there any other, thank you, Neal, for that on the, adding the insurance. Any other, and did anybody else have any other topics for the forest or priorities that we think should be considered for the forest?
Not specifically on forest, I'll wait.
Okay. Did you have any for the forest?
Yeah, I think what we're all saying too, so there's going to be the forest master plan, and then there's going to be policy. And that's the thing that can change. So I think we're going to have a couple of different areas we're going to look at and need to look at in the coming years. First, getting the master plan done, and then adjusting our policies to fit what the state mandates are.
I think I had one more, which is the, and I think perhaps maybe, I don't know, Ken, if you're open to this since it's forest and beach, but perhaps some of the consensus of the comments, I don't know, as a next step, maybe you could share back a list of priorities that we could then, it would be nice if we could get agreement across the commission. We won't do it all today, but across the commission to take to city council. One other one, and I don't know if this makes the top 3, but I do think advancing the resident education materials for their private parcels, for example, the recommended trees, or landscaping related to the natives. And we've heard a lot, we have a lot of people with deep knowledge in our community about the ecosystem that would be nice for the forest and what, I think that would be a, that's one, rather than wait till just when we have a plan done, is there something that we could do or get volunteers in our community to put something together?
And to add on to that, I may just be saying what you just said. Define terminology appropriate to major items such as tree health and risk, other factors that go into tree pruning and removal, improve publication on the Carmel website, and so that we communicate this information to our citizens. I think if we're using terms and definitions for health of a tree, risk of a tree, et cetera, let's make sure we're tight on the terminology, we're publishing it correctly so that, again, we're consistent.
Okay. Harry, do you want to kick us off on the beach?
I guess my comment on the beach a little bit is that even looking back over some of the past meetings, there seems to be a lot of very general outstanding proposals and analysis and stuff about the beach for both short-term and long-term. I guess my goal would be to try and get some prioritization so we understand what are some of the short-term things that we're doing, what are some of the long-term things that are medium-term, long-term, and just get a real working list of things. It feels like we all know that there are problems with some of the rock walls, there's problems with the stairs, and it just seems to kind of ride along without kind of like, we got to take care of this within 2 years, we got to take care of this within 4 years, and really get that a little maybe more nailed down, and maybe then we need the council's support for the money on it, obviously, but it seems like there's a lot of very floating stuff about the beach and what needs done. So I'd like to see us really come up with a concrete plan would be my goal.
And that's really you're speaking specifically in the area of like the capital projects, like we see a lot of things like stairs, there's the drainage systems, right?
Right, and I think that all falls under capital, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some maintenance stuff, but I'm not sure that's, for us, I think it's really about taking care of the beach for the short term, what we can, and how we afford it, and then what's the longer term plan. And I know I read through the last report from the company that put together that report from us and saw it, and there's just a lot of ways we can go. There's things we can go from doing nothing to trying to do everything, and it would be nice to really get some kind of prioritization for us and get that as part of a plan for you guys. I'm sure that would feel better.
okay. Does anybody else on the beach?
General stuff.
General, you're, okay, you can wait, okay. I had two for the beach. One was having some collaboration with our environmental resources in the city. I think this might be Mary, regarding what's possible in terms of, I'll just call it kelp management and other debris. I know we've had a lot of limitations in the past, like when we've been presented, because we're part of it's a national marine sanctuary and a state sanctuary, that we have a lot of limitations on what we can do with things on the beach, but there's maybe Southern California can remove a lot of the old kelp because they don't have those same sanctuary provisions. But it would just, I think, be helpful to have a clarification on that. I think it comes in my mind under sort of just a broader beautification priority for the beach, which I think, Sarah, is a really critical asset in our town as much as the forest. And I think our beach sometimes gets less priority. I guess there's less urgent needs. We do have deferred maintenance on the beach, Harry. Thank you for bringing that up, right? We do have some deferred capital improvement areas in the beach, but we sometimes see things, we sometimes get a lot of kelp down there that just sits, and some of it may not be, if some of it is above the tide area or the mean tide lines where we have the ability to do some things, maybe we could be more proactive. I think we also used to have we heard in one of our meetings a winterization program that the city used to do that we're no longer doing. I think Mary spoke to that at one point. Like, there used to be things that the city did, moving sand and things that to help it was a winterization program that was done before the winter, And my understanding, I think Mary said that it was stopped for budget reasons, not for environmental or other reasons. So I just think the beautification of the beach in terms of maintaining it, are there things we can do? And the last one I'll comment in the same bucket is protecting our ocean views. We do have a code in the city that tents and structures are not allowed on the beach. I think if you look at the city code, it technically says umbrellas are the allowed sunshade protection on the beach. And I think sometimes when you walk the beach, when it's a crowded weekend, if you're at the top of the sand, you can hardly see the water because it's just tent after tent after tent. And if you're at the water's edge looking up, you know, you don't even see the sand either from the top or the bottom because it can be so filled. So I just think making some progress on beautification overall would be something I'd like to see as a priority.
Can I have a point of clarity here? As I look at the extraordinary businesses, Forest Beach Commission goals, and I hear a lot of like public works goals in here, like what you're asking of us as public works to provide, but I'm looking, and what we probably want to do is what is the commission goals? And then all that other stuff can feed into whatever that goal. So is the goal to improve policies on the beach, then that's great, and that means all this. If the goal is to find funding or increase funding or support, then that's helpful for the commission. So I guess that's what I was just wondering, is this a commission goal, what the commission would like to work on to, or just get clarity, that's all. And I mean that respectfully,
I think for me, the answer is yes. It is both to me. It's understanding, you know, what you guys see as priorities, what has come through on the reports as priorities, and then how do we work together to get that to the council, to get the money we need to get it prioritized so that you then can go execute and what needs done. So to me, it's kind of yes.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for that clarification, because I actually have some, I would call them tactical process-oriented. And as you're talking, I was thinking, okay, good point. Is this really a Forest and Beach Commission, or is this really, here, I want this from the Public Works kind of thing? It's kind of gray area. So let me just read mine, and you can tell me what you think. So the first one, define requirements for the monthly forestry report on trees and all things metrics. And, you know, I know we've gone back and forth, we've talked about tree keeper and that information, and I thought, and Commissioner Brezoczky and I have attempted this in a little bit, come up with a set of requirements that we want as a Forest and Beach Commission in terms of what do we want to have reported out from our forester. And then we can give that to you, and Justin and Ken, you guys can determine how to provide that. And I think that would be a combination of us working together, but also maybe finding out what City Council wants in terms of reporting on the trees and forests. So I think that may initially start as a Forest and Beach Commission idea, but then obviously you would have to interact with it on that one. So that's the first one. Any comment? Okay, I'll keep going. Okay, let me just read what I wrote. A dashboard that provides a high-level overview of all ongoing Forest and Beach CIP projects. And I think you've talked about it a little bit. I find there's a lot of complicated projects going on, and sometimes the terminology and the names change of the titles of them, and trying to track all this can be advanced calculus. Okay, I have a Google spreadsheet that I've kind of pulled all this information together. I have a really rudimentary dashboard that I'm trying to use to track stuff, but I would love to see at a high level, because I think this would help from the prioritization of stuff. Here's all the universe of projects, and it's not, there's probably like, what, 10 or 12 at the max? You know, simple information for each project, red, green, blue, red, green, yellow, what's going on with that project? You know, is it on track? When is the expected completion date? Just so we can get an idea of, here are all these projects, where they're at, because there's dependencies too, right? And so I think maybe we as Forest and Beach work through what we would like to see at a high level so we can be consistent. Because I also find you spend a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, is this really this project or that project? And it's just time spent on that is time spent not thinking about something else. So that's the other item I had.
I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
just build on that and say, I think that's really important, Neal, because, for example, even if we identified, Ken, like 3 priorities or 3 areas that we wanted to make sure we maintain forest and beach attention to in the next fiscal, and I don't know if that's 3 on forest and 3 on beach or 2 and 1. This I defer back to like you and the city staff into what's a priority, but I think even something like the tree fine system, that came up so many times across the year where people said, we had people come to Justin was trying to assess fines. We would have a conversation, we would assess the maximum fine, and everybody felt like it still wasn't enough. But even trying to get the fines up for first discussion, it took a couple months, right? Because Justin needed to do the research. It took a few months to come to the presentation we'll have today. And then, it probably will take a time or 2 to cycle through before we have something for city council. So just as a practical matter, it's exactly what you're saying, Neal, like where we put our time
Yep.
where do we put our time is I think where we'll see progress. And so how do we pick a couple of things that we just keep chipping away at? That's all. Yeah. Continue. I think I jumped in on your.
No, that's fine. This one's very tactical, and honestly, I don't know if it's a goal or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. You can tell me. Are you worried?
No, I'm good.
Formalize prioritization and severity for reporting issues to Public Works, improve mechanism to allow citizens to report and track issues. This comes back to my, software development and managing projects. Oftentimes it's important to have the severity of a problem and then the prioritization of it. And you've talked about the resources. Do we have enough? Do we want to do anything where we get a little bit more formal about citizens reporting, being able to track it better, having priorities and severities on this information, being transparent, show it to the citizens. So,
311 that they haven't been yet.
something like that. Something like that. Again, a very tactical thing, but I said it. There you go.
You got it.
And the final one, confirm and ensure consistency of roles and responsibilities of Forest and Beach with the Planning Commission, City Council, staff, so that everyone understands what we can and cannot do. Let me anecdotally give you another insight on this. I was at the last Planning Commission meeting. Justin, you was there too, and the Gonzalez plan came up, and that was the one where we had voted on the tree removal, if you recall. And it was a 3-2 vote. And I remember somebody on the Planning Commission making the comment about why Forest and Beach voted this way to support it, the removal. And I think their thought was, well, that's not what the municipal code says. So there's a confusion in terms of what we can and cannot do. And I think it would be good for us to make sure we're in sync and we're communicating so that City Council understands and accepts what we can and can't do in terms of voting on things like, tree removals, and fines probably coming up too is a good one, along with Planning Commission and staff. Because I think I've heard enough different opinions that it's worthwhile to make sure we're consistent on that.
It's interesting because for the 6 years I've been on this, we've been perfectly able to decide on whether a tree is appropriate or not, whereas the forester says the tree's healthy, but that doesn't keep us from saying yes, but it's also leaning too hard on the house and so on. Just as an interesting aside, there's a historic house on, it's around 13th, and anyway, the important thing was that several times they'd try to get this really beautiful pine tree down, but it was a historic house. And finally, it broke these really beautiful glass doors that, I don't know how you describe them, when they have leaded things and
Stained glass.
unfortunately, so you had to get new glass doors when they went to the beautiful old ones. We waited too long, is what it boiled down to. So, there is that issue of when do you make that decision? What is important? Is the historic glass doors important, or is eventually the pine tree did have to come down?
Other factors.
Yeah,
to consider.
well, factors about the house, but yeah, not the doors, yeah.
Well, can I ask a question kind of about this? Just, Neal brings up a good point, and it reminds me of the metal roof thing. It seems like there should be a standard, and whatever the standard is, there really shouldn't be a lot of wiggle room. There should obviously be room for making exceptions, and it seems like metal roofs is a good example of where there was a lot of wiggle room on the part of the planning commission on who got approved or not. Trees seems to find that way too, and I guess my hope would be that, to Neal's point, that we have a pretty standard way of determining what's what, and then there's a little room for wiggle, but probably not much, so that we're consistent. So are you saying the other, Sarah, that we should have more wiggle room, or should we be really trying to?
Well, I think that was an unusual situation in that there aren't that many historic glass, beautiful doors, so it was a little bit different, but we do have to cover the waterfront. I mean, there's different houses and so on, there's different sorts of houses.
I think that, I would just say in the time I've been on the commission, I think a couple of years now, I think the commission operates pretty consistently. What happens is, the reason we're here is Justin approves a lot of tree removals related to hazards, but there are certain, if a tree is healthy, he doesn't have the ability to authorize that removal. Those are the only trees that we see. And so most of the time, it's a healthy tree that Justin's not authorizing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but he's not authorizing a removal because it's not within his authority to do so. And so it comes here. And so we will see, for example, we've had plenty of people that have come in the past couple of years where they say it's a bad storm, I go check into a hotel, I'm afraid this tree is going to land on my bedroom. We've had people come in and say the tree landed on my garage and now I've got it, right? We've actually been to site visits where we've seen the damage that these trees have done to people's homes. So when people come in with high safety concerns about a tree, I don't want to anticipate problems, but if people come in saying I've lost my insurance because I have a tree too close to my house, right? Like, I think there's been a lot of support for people who've had extenuating circumstances around trees, even if they're healthy. And the place where it's been hardest is actually when it comes to like construction or remodeling, et cetera. And I think that's where you see, particularly, that's where I think the commission, in my experience, has leaned towards. That's why you see a conversation around how many trees are on the lot, right? How many large trees are on the lot? How many, right? Does that make sense? Is this against the backdrop of all of our recommendations, is this a practical request or not? Does that make sense? Those are the ones I think that we see.
And another factor that we sometimes encounter are the tree roots or the tree damaging the home. Justin, from what I understand, can't approve those. If the tree is a healthy tree, it can tear your foundation up, and it's something that he can't approve, and those types of things come to us. So it's sort of those outside of the norm sort of things that we end up, and it's discussed in the commission, and it kind of goes outside of, I think, what Justin's scope is. And so it's those
We see the
extraordinary
outliers.
things.
Yeah.
How many times would you say that the decision of this commission gets overturned as it moves up? Is that never, rare?
Well, certainly, I don't think anything's been overturned in the last 3.5, 4
So
years. Sarah?
it's
I
nothing.
can't, no, the only one I experienced was, and I was very new to it. They had voted a $50,000 penalty on this woman from out of the town who had really wrecked several trees. And I think that actually went through. I thought it was huge. I was really taken back. But I think it was the city government, not the voted people, took that possibility away, and it was more set the amounts that would be.
So,
That was the precedent for why we couldn't assess more fine. The only thing that the city attorney has gotten involved in with Forest and Beach has been saying that the fines that are in the code, we cannot exceed the fines that are in the city code. that's why, hence the discussion on fines today.
People have been assessed fines, and like there was a job up on Guadalupe where a contractor was building a house and cut some roots, and they ended up, making him cut the neighbor's tree down and paying for it, and then assessed a pretty hefty fine, and then that got negotiated down when they appealed that to city council. Usually it gets appealed to city council, and then in terms of things being overturned, I can't think of anything, being outright overturned. The case for planning commission last month was your approval was pending planning commission's approval, and planning commission didn't approve the design, and not just because of the tree. There were other reasons. There was a plate height issue. It was an architectural issue, not just a tree issue.
But that is one area that is a little bit unclear. Sometimes people will bring plans to, like, sometimes the planning commission won't look at something until Forest and Beach has looked at it and said, well, what do you think? Are you willing to go along with this plan or not before they review it in planning? And sometimes it's vice versa. Sometimes people go to planning and then planning comes to us and says, oh, are you going to approve this tree removal for this plant? Does that make sense? I've seen it go both ways. Sometimes comes here for it, and it seems to, there doesn't seem to be, it can go both directions. Yeah.
And there's different layers of planning commission. There's the conceptual plan where you go to first, and then there's kind of working out the kinks in between. And in the code, it says that anything shall be heard by the Forest and Beach Commission or the Historical Resources Board before the chair of the Planning Commission hears it. So anything involving trees really should go here, but I think just the amount of projects that have been going through has just been, it would make everybody too busy, and they all say that they're going to work around the trees, and then they don't, and that's also why we're here to the tree fines.
But I think on many of those plans that go into planning, if you review them and they're compliant or they meet the recommendations, there's really no need for it to necessarily come here. It's just the ones where there would be an exception or an outlier or something that required, right?
So, good discussion, on the Gonzalez one. Some of the planning commission people were confused in terms of what the Forest and Beach was, deciding upon. So again, maybe this is just a communication issue. Maybe there's been enough turnover of people where it's worthwhile to kind of reinforce again, what we can and can't do. Make sure we're in sync with planning commission, with city council, with staff, just to get a consistency, to kind of streamline stuff, make sure everybody's in agreement.
I brought Evan Court, the planner, here for that project, and he can answer some questions as well.
Do we have, just one second, our topic right now is just Forest and Beach priorities, so I want to make sure that, do we have this as an agenda item later?
Just tree fines, not that, but
Under
you're discussing it if you want any clarification on that specific instance. But what did you want to say?
My name's Evan Court. I'm the senior planner. I was also the planner on the Gonzalez project. So just in terms of how the planning process interacts with the Forest and Beach Commission process. So the code says that Justin mentioned this, when trees are involved with a planning project, the code says that Forest and Beach Commission shall hear a project prior to action by the Planning Commission or consideration. It doesn't state when in that planning process. I think possibly that the Forest and Beach Commission has not had the benefit of seeing a complete set of plans at that point. So one thing that we could do in the future is not sending those plans to you until the plans are deemed complete. So I think for example, the Gonzalez project, all you had, I think, was a site plan. You didn't have the full set of architectural plans. So you didn't have the benefit of seeing the complete project, just a rough idea.
But I think in that case, though, this happens a lot, that we sometimes see plans incomplete. And the reason is it's very expensive for people to build plans. And so often, that's actually the best time for us to see it, right? Is because they'll come in and say, oh, this is the project I'm envisioning. this tree, you know, if they have a tree they want to propose removal on, particularly if it's deemed a significant tree, it's helpful for them to have an opinion from Forest and Beach before they go invest significant money in their architect
Yeah,
to
that-
continue making the plan. So we get a little bit in this chicken and egg a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's okay, right? In the case of the Forest and Beach Commission, a plan that, for that property that required the removal of that tree close to the home was authorized. And if they end up changing their plans or do something, you know, if they go and develop a different plan, they can come back. Because I think that the approval was based on, it's typically tied to like a planning commissioner approval of the final plan, right? So it wasn't just
Yeah, that's actually quite contrary to our findings required for approval and really all of our policy documents and guiding documents. You shouldn't be removing significant trees for development. You should be designing and building around the trees. So, you know, non-significant trees, you know, there's a removal process. Justin mentioned non-significant, moderately significant trees. When related to construction, those can be approved for removal. Those are supposed to be approved by the Forest and Beach Commission.
Could you speak a little louder?
Oh, yeah,
I'm not
I
getting what-
apologize.
First of all, I don't know who you are. What part of the city do you,
I work in the planning department. I'm a senior planner.
you work what?
I'm in the planning department.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm the senior planner.
okay.
So when you have any tree proposed for removal is supposed to be considered by the Forest and Beach Commission. That hasn't always been the case. I've been here for 7 years. I don't think I've ever had a non-significant tree go before the Forest and Beach Commission for removal. That's always handled by the forester. Same with moderately significant. For some reason, the process has always been just significant trees go before the Forest and Beach Commission. However, that is contrary to what the code says, though. In terms of planning development, the code says, you know, protect and build around significant trees, moderately significant, and non-significant trees. Those have different findings for removal than the significant trees. Significant trees should be planned around and protected during construction, and then there's a separate set of findings required for removal. One of those findings we have for design study approval is, in order to basically pass go, is you have to make a finding that no significant trees are proposed for removal. And also the development needs to be 6 feet from all significant trees. So you need space around trees as well as no trees proposed, significant trees proposed for removal.
So I think the discussion we're having just highlights, I think, what you brought up, Neal, confirming your point of confirming and ensuring the roles and responsibilities across Forest and Beach and how we interact with other commissions, I think is really important. Our topic here was to talk about strategic priorities and not to discuss the Gonzalez case specifically. So if everyone's okay, I'd like to just bring it back
Yeah,
to that
absolutely.
topic, and we'll note that that's an important one
Yes.
to keep on the agenda for us, right? To the clarification there, because we do over time, we have seen, I would say for those of us that have been here, we do see things come before us when the plans are not complete. Often for good,
Most of the time,
often for good reason,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So
Yeah.
I just think that's something for us to.
And I appreciate the information. Thank you very much. And I think it'd be a great subsequent conversation, you know, that we can grind through and get into some detail. So thank you for that.
Okay, so do we have is there any public comment? Anybody that would like to make a,
And I'd
Oh,
like one more.
go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry,
would
go
like
ahead,
to
Tamara.
just,
Yep.
to touch on something sort of, it's reconfirming some thoughts that I've had about sort of where we're going with fire safety policy changes within the city, within the forestry department. I would like to look at, I wasn't necessarily going to bring it up at this point, but I think this is perhaps a good opportunity. I would like us to form a work group, an ad hoc committee to help to support our staff and our city with these changes and begin to look at the policies
Yeah.
that we will need to incorporate for fire, for trees. So that is something that I would be talking with Ken in the coming weeks before our next meeting. That is something that this commission can do. We can form our own subcommittee. And I just want to make a quick note about that, that when they are established for a single limited purpose and duration, and are considered ad hoc and therefore are not subject to the Brown Act. So we can in fact have as many of our commissioners who would like to be involved in this, as well as a staff person and perhaps some community members as well. So I think that would be a good idea for us, considering all of the changes that are going on, and to perhaps start with the forest side of things. So we can
great
discuss that at a follow-up meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments? Anybody want to put anything into the conversation on forest or beach? Okay, super helpful. I think Ken, I took a few notes and I'll send them your way, but I think that it would be useful to have something that we could be tracking and moving forward. Okay, do we have any, anybody in chambers or online that wants to make a public comment on this topic before we continue?
Of course.
Okay.
Important for members of this commission to look at the Coastal Act and the land use plan and understand that we are a very special and unique community, especially a coastal community. We're not like just everybody else. So we have special privileges, but also requirements. And it's very important for the commission to always be cognizant of where your decision-making and where your ideas about your responsibility are. Because, I mean, we've had staff who has not even realized after they've been here several years that we actually are in the coastal zone and that we're protected. And I think that's extremely important. I just wanted to mention that. Because when you look at your goals, we do have obligations under that act, and that we're not as freewheeling as some people would like to think we are. So that's my only comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yvette, did we have anybody online?
No one's hands are raised at this time.
Okay. Before we move to the consent agenda, I just wanted to announce that we procedurally, technically, we should have, we thought that we could switch the chair at the end of this meeting, but that's what we are prepared to do for next meeting. So do we need a motion? Does Tamara need to make a motion for me to continue chairing just till the end of today, until next month? Do you want a motion for that, or is there?
No, I don't
just
think we need a
if there's
motion.
consensus?
If you guys have a consensus, we'll just keep it as it is, but next, or at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, okay. All right, so with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The only item we had on the consent agenda today was the Public Works Director's report. Is there anybody that would, do we have a motion on the consent agenda, or is there, unless anybody has something that they would like to have discussed before? Move, okay. Are you making a motion, Sarah? Oh, okay, okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Sarah? Okay. Commissioner Berling? Chair Brezoczky?
Yes,
Commissioner Michie?
Yes.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Commissioner Rutta?
Yes.
Thank you. This motion is passed.
okay, and moving to our first of two orders of business. The first is to receive a presentation on tree fines. Justin?
Thank you, Chair Brezoczky, Commissioner Brezoczky, Vice Chair. Sorry. Can you scroll down to the second page of the staff report? I don't have a mouse anymore. Yeah. Yeah, the second page of this one. I'm gonna not go over the, oh, that's the third page. One more. Yeah, up to the top. Okay, so as has been discussed in the past agenda item, we've had issues in the past where we've levied fines during egregious damage to trees from construction. And over the past 10 years, really, since the past 10 years, the level of construction has just gone up by a lot. The numbers here that Evan actually helped me pull. In 2013, we had 77 building and planning applications. 2014, there were 268. 2015, there were 365. And then they peaked in 2016 at 414, which is, over 300 plus more than 3 years before. And that really tied in with the Malpaso water entitlement. And especially now with this new bit of water that might come, I just see construction going up, even though, you're kind of maxed out on these small properties. And, I was looking around, I got the information off realtor.com that the average price per square foot of houses in this community are $2,100 per square foot, which is, I couldn't find a firm number, but I inferred that it's within the top 50 in America, which is extremely high. And especially on such small lots, that's just the price per square foot, is just insane. And it really it pushes people who are building, anybody who's building, to maximize their square footage for their value, and especially developers, which is a extra bit of problem, because if you're not tied to the property and the tree that might be in front could totally frame the front and make it extra beautiful, but if you're not going to live there and you're just going to turn it and burn it, that tree could just be in the way of potentially maximizing your building footprint. So right now, our code in Municipal Code Section 17.48.150B, it only calls out $250 for damage to a tree from the first infraction per tree. So, and really to recoup that, it's not really worth anybody's time or energy and bringing it to you guys. $500 on the second infraction, even that's still not. I just talked with the city forester, or there's no city forester, the parks operation manager in Monterey, and how they manage the city forester, that their tickets for infractions are $1,000, which is still not a lot. And they have a ticket book where they can ticket them. The goal of this, and the goal of, since we started this project or talk, I think it started at 5th and Carpenter, really, is to try to make something, these fines have a little more teeth, a little bit more of a deterrent, and just even if it's not going to deter them, if people with these deep pockets, it ends up being the cost of doing business. But if we can, if it is the cost of doing business, at least make it worth what the city's going to recoup. And because,
Well, it should be fair. It should be a fair market value fine, right? Like
we'll get to that, exactly. So I'm not making any, formal recommendations. I just brought a few different ideas to mill around, and, we can have a good discussion about what we think fits, what punishment fits the crime in a town like this, which is hard because as we're discussing everything else, everything's evolving, fire codes, building codes, the forest is aging, but at the same time, trees can't be shouldn't be I don't believe trees should be an afterthought in terms of development. So I brought, the first one is, just codify the damages, high flat rates. I provided some examples. This one I really liked, actually, the number C, La Cañada, Flint Ridge. I've never heard of that town before, and it
Yeah.
seems like a small town to have $18,000 for trees over 36 inches as their base fine. And it's straight up, there's a chart, and it's called out by each diameter class has a different fine. And I think that is one way to do it. That would fit really neatly in the municipal code. 6 to 12 inches, 12 to 8 to 18, something, whatever, that can be developed. But based on size or based on species, it's a X size for a Y species. And if it's on the significant trees, if it's on the, a pine will be worth more than an acacia, and it's not necessarily tied to tree valuation, even though that's kind of what we do. The second idea, which I'd always liked when I did a couple jobs up in Saratoga when I was a consultant, and they require a deposit before any work near trees. And so I came in, I valued all the trees, which turned out about 18 trees that were along a driveway and next to a proposed garage. I think it was $250,000 with the valuation of all the trees, large mature oaks and deodar cedars. And then they require 25 to 100%, whatever the judgment is of the arborist deposit that goes into an account set up. And up there they have a contract arborist, and that money is used to pay for the administration of the permit. But we have city staff here, so that could just be held in some sort of an account in case something happens, or similar to like a bond situation. And then the third option, which came up kind of late in this, which I like, and I don't know how we would go about this, maybe set this by council in terms of what the number is or what the severity could be, is assess a flat rate, like a 10,000 either per tree or the base rate. You messed it, you damaged a tree, the project is assessed a $10,000 fee, and then assess an additional fine on top of that tied to the property value, like a 2 to 5% or 1 to 5%, judging on different factors. So if it's not that egregious, it'd be closer to a 1%, or if it's just they dug a giant pit and a tree's about to fall over, 5%. And because with the property values the way they are, it's just something that would tie it to the value, make it commensurate with what they've done. Or trees, if the tree maybe wasn't a good tree, but if it's a big, healthy redwood and they just cut it straight up and down, something that's gonna really try to deter some of this. I just see the level of construction related tree loss increasing, and even not even directly. There's stuff that there was a tree that they put a permit in to remove it, and it's no way, it's way too healthy, really ginormous healthy pine. But then it was a construction site, regular working, I don't think they did anything egregious, but then the tree died afterwards. And I don't know if it was neglected to death, because technically if it's a very significant tree on a construction site, they need to be doing everything they can to protect it and make sure it lives. So that's just another wrinkle, is it's things that are kind of collateral damage versus bulldozing through the roots. And that could be part of the 1 to 5%, and again, set by council or figure some way we set what gets the maximum fines. And I gave an old example, which we pretty much talked about. 10%, $10,000 flat fee, 2% say lower, 2%, on a $2.5 million parcel, that's $50,000, so $60,000 as the fine. And then that would be, they would most likely appeal that to city council, then they would do some wheeling and dealing there, or some negotiating to see what they would think is commensurate.
On your questions, Justin, about city council versus Forest and Beach, I guess, what I would envision is that we could come up with a recommendation for city council
Yeah.
that city council would take action on, right? And it would seem like while we're, I don't know how long it will take to study this, but it would seem like, at a minimum, having city council change the 250 and 500 to like 10,000 and 20,000 or 15,000 and 30,000, that one code, it only has to be heard twice at city council. I mean, to me, just doing something very simple to immediately impact something that is woefully underpenalized while you come up with a lot of whatever. I think that the key is going to have it's going to need to be a simple, some kind of simple structure that's easy to implement, that doesn't have a lot of subjectivity to it, right? And the challenge with, like, I think the percent of parcel, even though that's creative, is you're going to get into debates between how am I assessed for in property taxes by the county versus what does Zillow say the value of my property is, and you're going to get into an appraisal war, and there's going to be a lot of judgment that's subjective. So I think trying to have something that's very simple, but clearly, even if you look at the examples you've brought to us, this is something that, for whatever reason, is just in the code and is woefully insufficient.
And yeah, Justin, this is the sort of thing that I was envisioning being part of this subcommittee, that perhaps we could start to look at this, because I think it really needs to be looked at and discussed. And I know we only have so much time and we meet once a month for this commission. If we could, with your permission, with Ken's, perhaps start to look at this in this committee that I'd like to see formed. This is one of the areas, fines and policy, that then we could make recommendations from this committee. We would report back each month, but it would be something that then this whole commission, I mean, I would love it if the entire commission wanted to be a part of this, because I think this needs a lot of time. We've been talking about it for years.
Yeah.
And I think that to bring in this commission and some other community members, others into this committee to begin to talk about this, so we can make recommendations
and
to you, if that's something that you would see. These are the types of things I'm thinking that would be a good opportunity for us to put into this kind of a committee that we can discuss. Again, this has been going on for years. We've been talking about this, and it's so hard to just stay on top of what we need to do. So that is something, and it's something that we can talk about perhaps at our next agenda setting meeting. But I would like to see that kind of a committee put together where,
Okay, I like that idea, just to bring in, other outside, because it's going to take a
Other
lot
outsiders.
to be fair and to be defensible. We don't want to
Exactly.
open ourselves up to
Right.
scrutiny. Also, the reason Evan is here is to talk about his experience with the landscape of planning and building and tree issues, but I would like to have him speak to that a little bit if possible, if that's okay.
Can I just comment on what you just said? I almost feel like this is a separate issue that would be a separate subcommittee.
Yeah, I agree.
Totally, because I think this is going to be a lot of work, and I'd almost like to see the one you were talking about really focus on that and let this be its own, if that's possible, subcommittee, because this is huge.
Yeah,
Two
there's a
separate
lot.
topics. They're
It's
different
two separate.
topics.
Well, what it's dealing with, there's a lot of, you mean fines?
Fines separated from the subcommittee you were kind of talking about earlier.
With fire.
Yeah, for fire.
Well, not just fire, but other policies. I think there's a lot of policies. Now, we can have two committees. We can split it up. I think that a lot of us would be on both of them.
Yeah, that would be. kind of
But that
a-
is something that we could consider too.
Yeah.
Looking at breaking up, if we feel it's too much, if we feel as though it would be too big. And that's why I had been thinking about this, and I did want to actually speak with Ken and with Justin, but since we're talking about what our priorities are, here we are. But I would love to have their input on it, see if you feel it should be two separate things, if it should be one. But there's so much, I think, change that's coming with our policies and with our fine on our trees and with the fire that we can decide how we might want to best tackle that.
It almost sounds like, first off, stepping back, it's the subcommittee is a policy review. And in that, we can start tackling the
That's
different
what I was
topics.
thinking.
I think that's where
what
you're
I was
getting
thinking.
at,
That's
yeah.
exactly what I was
And I
thinking.
see what you're saying. So let's tackle one of these ordinances at a time. And then
That's exactly.
and address that.
Exactly.
And the fines actually weren't up to us to determine. The city.
No, we can.
We
We can
make
recommend.
it- We can recommend to
Recommendations.
city
We can
council.
recommend, and then the city council will have to take that up and
That's fine.
and adopt that.
I had a question.
Right.
Thank you for putting this together. And I like the fact that you mentioned cost of business, because some of these construction projects are millions of dollars. And so even a $10,000 to $30,000 fine, and I like that idea of simplicity, right? But I know in the code, 1748-150, subsection C, number 1, it talks about may require replacement trees to be planted upon completion. Does that also mean it's already in the municipal code that we can tell somebody, you have to plant a tree in that same spot, or right where it kind of sort of where it is, for those cases where somebody just decides to cut the tree down because they're going to write a check for 30 grand because it is just noise to them? And I feel like, and this is a discussion point, from a punitive point of view, I'd like us to at least talk about, we know you cut the tree down on purpose because you were just going to write a check. We're going to make you put that tree back or something similar to it. And so I'm curious if you thought about that.
I have, and that's a pretty common question, because people will, even when they cut a tree down for any permit, well, does it have to be in the same place? I'd have to really, really check what my authority is to mandate things on private property. I don't know if I can say, you gotta plant that right there. If it's in terms of a planning thing, I feel like it should be, because they'll cut a tree down and they'll get their way. They'll get the ocean view, but I'm thinking more of like another project that on the 13th area, I don't want to name it, cut a tree down and they get their 2-car garage. That's what they've always wanted, and that's what was cost of doing business. So, and the former forester did not make them replant in the exact same place.
Just I had
I'm
just
not
some
sure
questions.
that you can, even like the recommendation, it's not in the code. So it's a recommendation on the number of tree. I know in the forest master plan, for example, there's been a lot of discussion about reducing the number of trees. Like, it's not practical to think you can put 4 trees on a 4,000 square foot lot right now when they're maxed out on the build. And you certainly can't put 3 large trees, right? Like the number, so there's been discussion about reducing that in the recommendations. But I think that some of these, I guess what I would hope for us as a commission is that we could quickly come up with a recommendation to city council, even if it's temporary on the code. I mean, that the code is updated, we at least get rid of the $250 and $500, which are clearly not market, and study it at the same time. Like, I just feel like why should we wait 3 to 6 months to change something that we know today is woefully insufficient?
So,
And we have enough evidence like, okay, so if you put your attorney's hat on and you look at the examples you have, fines in the $10,000 to $30,000 range we certainly have other jurisdictions where they have those. We're not putting an unreasonable rate relative to other jurisdictions in the state.
yeah.
So I would be open to sharing your analysis with city council and recommending an immediate on that one particular ordinance while we're studying it to come up with a more comprehensive plan for people. You
Can I
at
ask a
least get rid
question
of-
though, Kelly,
yeah.
on this? Because I just want to make sure the examples that you gave, Justin, it seems like most of them refer only to trees that are on a street or city property. Like if you look at La Cañada Flint Ridge, it's removing or damaging trees in the public right of way. And I think what we're talking about here is more what happens on private property.
Well, different cities have different regulations.
That's
So
what I mean. When we look at these.
Our trees are.
San Mateo is 10,000.
San Mateo and I think
And also Saratoga.
were the two that
Yeah.
that were all about private property. The rest of these were a little, I couldn't tell on a couple of them, but San Jose is more about, it was a little ambiguous about, is it on private property or public? So,
It's for what's protected, so different codes protect different things, and we
Right.
protect everything. So that's,
but I think what we're more talking about is what happens during especially a construction project when it's on private property, right? Or I guess on public.
Well, I would say,
Or
if
public.
we have,
If it was
most
in the
people
street,
have,
yeah, you're right.
most, I would say, I would guess that most parcels in our Carmel-by-the-Sea jurisdiction have trees in a public right-of-way that's
Part of construction.
immediately adjacent to
Yeah,
their
that's fine,
private
that's fair,
parcel, and we see people do things to those trees,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they should
We do.
also be, though, those should also be addressed,
I just didn't
right?
know if you're talking about fines. Do you have more leeway if it has to do with a tree that's on a public right-of-way? Or do you have less leeway when it's on private property, or how does that work?
Yeah, and that's
That was
something
my
that
question.
we do need to
can
address.
study.
We actually had that happen last year where we had someone who sort of cut a lot of trees that were city trees. And we had a maximum that we could fine them, and that was, sort of goes back to what Sarah said. We had wanted to give a larger fine, but we had to work within our boundaries. I think we were able to fine them like $9,000. So I think those are the things we need to start to address in this committee. We need to go through a lot of different, I know Kelly would like to see just this particular one.
Well, I'm
If
just
we can
saying-
address that now, no, I hear what you're saying. While we tackle all the many layers.
there's all these wrinkles to that too, is there's another case going on right now in a suburb of Seattle where a resident trespassed onto the county property and took, I think it was 100-something trees out, and the county actually sued them, and because it was technically a trespass, they were going for treble damages, so you could do the tree valuation times triple. Because it's a city tree, like you're going beyond that.
Right.
I'd have to talk to the city attorney, but that's just, there's more, you could even be more aggressive on city trees.
Right.
I did have one more question, and then I'll hand it over.
My comment, Commissioner Brezoczky, would be, we may get just one bite at the apple, so to speak. City council's pretty impacted in terms of their schedule of stuff. So if we try to do this, multi-step, we may not get a second chance. Just something to think about.
Yeah, I don't have a strong point of view. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I feel that this is an urgent matter for our city.
Agreed.
And it's a relevant topic to this commission.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we don't overstudy it too many months. I don't think that this would be a really hard one to dive into and come up with a strong recommendation. And I actually, I can't imagine that people in our, residents in our city that this would meet opposition for increasing the fines for tree damages.
I just want to have Evan just talk to maybe some history he's had in the past, his time here, and just kind of what he sees as a trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Justin and I have, seen numerous instances of, construction impacting existing trees that were proposed for protection. I can, I fully concur with what he said, where, a tree is proposed to be protected throughout construction. For one reason or another, either during construction or shortly after the project is concluded, we receive a permit for that tree to be removed because it's in severe decline, or something happens during construction where the roots are severed, either intentionally or unintentionally, and the tree needs to come out because it's an immediate hazard. Throughout the planning process, the applicant states, all the trees will be protected. They demonstrate that on the plans, the trees or the development is adequately set back from the trees. However, when we get out into the field, it's just not it's not what's happening. Oftentimes, we have development planned around trees, often, creating really complex building forms. Then we get out into the field. It'll be built around a tree, but again, during construction, that tree's not protected. Then we're just left with a very odd looking house because, again, it was proposed to be built around some feature that is then no longer there. Am I hitting or missing anything you were hoping for me to hit on?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's just showing how multi-dimensional the issue is. Every facet of it, I don't know if it's willful for some of the planners, or not planners, but the architects, or just, we'll get, like we talked about it. The process now is I get a survey, I assess the significance of the trees, I give it to the planners, and they work with the architect to design the home around the significant trees. And oftentimes I'm not brought back until there are issues. Just the way the process works, and there's different things we need to look at, and once they start getting that far in, maybe they don't give us a grading sheet, or they don't give us something we won't know that there's actually a trench underneath something. It's hard to work with just that survey, like in what I showed you was just a two-dimensional, really. There's nothing, and the other thing is the process is we go through this process. So I tell them what is protected, what's significant, so they know what they need to work around. But oftentimes, they know what they want to build, and the architect and the owner will show up on site with almost a full set of plans, and it's like, well, you don't even know what's protected. But it's just there's so many things to really take into account. I'm glad that we can get out here and start the conversation.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too comes down to changing construction methods. When our code, is 20 some years old, same with our general plan, a lot has changed over that time. Construction's getting a lot more impactful. So the way, we might have built 20 years ago is different from the way we're building now. It's a lot more intensive on our small sites. So it's just, our code and our code basically hasn't caught up to our current development practices.
There was a document that Evan shared with me that I didn't have enough time to put it in here because it's a 400-page report to the Coastal Commission for when we were finalizing the coastal plan. And it really, even 23 years ago, it's the same thing we're talking about now, is houses are getting bigger, they're getting, the ordinances and the design guidelines are really built around the idea of building a 600 square foot single walled cottage on these 4,000 square foot lots, not a maximum allowed 1,800 square foot with a basement and shoring, and because what is the wall in reality is actually, that's not the dig. The dig is 3 feet past that for the over excavation and the shoring and the waterproof. So they can say it's 6 feet, but in reality they're taking 3 extra feet of roots, and it's those kind of issues that we run into in the field and when it's already down the road.
But I think, in fairness, unless you're going to take the allowable build down, which is highly controversial, I'm not suggesting I support that. I'm just saying by way of example, then the code has to catch up with that. Because it's not, I learned of something totally brand new this week, which is it's not just the wildfire, which I think the fire management, which we've talked about, and compliance with that. I was not aware of the state law mandate that all construction, whether it's remodel or new build, that the rainwater has to be captured, that not a drop of rain can go from the roof to the street. So the drainage systems that are now required to be put in require these rain capture, I'm not sure what the term.
Yeah, all the stormwater needs to
The
be
stormwater
infiltrated
needs to be
on
kept.
site.
So what you see on these properties where you have an 1,800 square foot home,
Plus a retention pit.
plus the retention pits, there end up being multiple retention pits that you cannot plant a tree on top of. So there really is not, there's no way to put 4 trees on a 4,000 square foot lot now for anybody that's doing a rebuild or a new construction, because these rain capture, these trenches, some friends of ours are remodeling right now, and I went to their house this weekend, and the PVC pipes that run from all different points of the roof all the way down into these huge trenches that have to be inspected as trenches prior to like the rock components being put in to fill the trench for the percolation ponds on the like you can't put a tree, I'm curious, like, do you put succulents on top of that? I don't know, like, what do you put on top of that area? But it really takes away a significant portion of what historically is a spot where you could have put a tree, for example. So the complexities on the trees, it's not just wildfire. This other rain, I don't know what the state law is, but this construction requirements around that will have significant implications for people.
Right, and that's for new properties, correct? New builds?
No,
That's just
and
for-
remodels. It doesn't,
Remodels of a certain level, I would imagine.
Well.
Can
clarify
you
that,
speak
but-
to that? What is is there a certain size
Yeah,
of remodel?
it is anytime you do, I'm trying to remember the number. It's anytime you replace, you add or replace a certain square footage of impervious surface. So that would be potentially a new roof or a patio. There's a certain threshold square footage. I can't remember that
Is
number.
it changing the footprint of the,
Potentially.
not
yeah.
necessarily your,
Or just the drainage system.
It's significant.
okay, significant, okay.
Yeah.
It's,
And whatever significant means,
Yeah,
we don't necessarily know
it's
that right
new-
now.
New or replaced.
it tears up the whole lot.
New
It's
or
not
replaced, so
built
you're
on.
beginning, like you're taking it to studs or something, or what are you
Well,
saying?
it could be
A new roof.
it could be changing the roof form. So say it's a gable
Okay.
roof and you're
Because it has to do with the drainage of the roof, so it's
Where
if you're changing how
changing how the
that
drainage flows.
currently drains, then perhaps you will need to, okay.
I did have one question for both of you, just maybe you can answer real quickly, is the policing structure now, from the planning commission having gone through remodels, there's a pretty set structure of coming to review the project, all that. What's the process for trees? So if you go and you get an approval or not to do something and we say we can't, who goes around and says, oops, you violated this, you've cut the roots? And then is that someone from the forest? Do you guys kind of say, hey, they've damaged some tree roots in the middle of construction? And then kind of beyond that for some of these cities, and this committee will take it up, I'm sure, but it's like, who would then be responsible in Saratoga for going back to these properties or throughout? Is it the foresters? And would we have to look at the resources we have to kind of handle all of this additional, it feels like policing of then if we put these fines in place? So that's a couple questions, but.
Yeah, I can't speak for other jurisdictions because I just done work in there. I don't know the process, but it's the forester, the building inspector goes on periodic assessments, code enforcement. It's a lot of neighbor policing. They call, hey, I'm seeing they're cutting roots, or I drive by, someone drives by, says, oh, there's a pile of roots in front of here. You guys should go check that out. The one that was the city trees down the road, one of my employees drove by and he goes, hey man, these guys are doing some wild stuff. You need to go check this out.
So it's a little bit catch as catch can at this point.
Yeah, we can't, we can't be everywhere at all times.
No, that's what I'm kind of getting to a little bit is,
Yeah.
if
But
we put some really big fines in, who's going to have to end up monitoring it? What's the resources? And I guess if you have a big enough fine, then it pays for the resources. But just as this committee gets together, those kind of thoughts, that's all.
Well, certainly the building inspectors
Would
are
see,
the ones
yeah.
who are the most frequent, right, Evan? Like at the different checkpoints, right? You certainly have people on site.
Yeah, there's a number of inspections that occur throughout construction. I don't know the exact number, but for a new build, it's, maybe at least once a month for a brand new house. That's on schedule. And then the planning department goes out, as Justin said, forestry goes out. There's multiple individuals who has the potential to catch a tree violation, especially a large significant tree. If there's something happening to it, there's a number of individuals who could catch it.
And I guess just the last question, Justin, real quick, is how many fines have we laid out for this, like in the last year-ish? Do you know, like how many of you caught and said it's 500
Last year,
bucks?
probably the one up on Carpenter.
Very few.
Very few, okay.
And again, it's the ones that come here are egregious. And there's a process. Like there was a job by Public Works that Dwayne, the building inspector, flagged me down. We went in there. We shut him down, but we didn't quite stop work. But because there looked like there were roots that were cut, and we had to really see what was going on. And then they hired a private arborist to show there was actually a redwood root, not an oak root, and they were able to get around. So we let them. But that was also the other issues with the drainage. So the tree issue was able to be handled rather easily. It was there was stuff the architect had to provide some more documents in terms of the drainage underneath the house. But really, I think what's only come to this commission, the only ones I've done in the 2 years I've been here were Monte Verde in 9th, 5th and Carpenter.
Just those two.
Just those two.
That's it.
Because I have to pay, or I hire a third-party independent arborist to do the valuations, and I'm trying to think of what he's really worked on, and that's pretty much about it.
This is really helpful, Justin. I appreciate you bringing some data into the discussion for us. I think this is if we could make progress on this in the next year, actually have
Oh,
an
yeah.
updated code through city council in the next 6 to 9 months, I think that would be a real contribution to our city.
Okay, yeah, this
Ahead
is,
of having a master plan done. To me, this is not rocket science. This is just, let's get practical about
yeah.
how do we get some fines in place that can, penalize, the behaviors we don't want to see. And similarly, how do we reward people for doing the right thing? Like the other thing that we haven't talked about here is the cost, could we waive the permits for people that are taking down dead trees on their private properties? Some of our local neighboring jurisdictions have done that. And, are there ways that we can incentivize people, reward them for doing,
The right thing.
behaviors that are helpful to our community?
And we did change some fees this year too, that we dropped the cost of pruning permits, so we can try to,
But I think some of that, I just think optimizing both ends of the spectrum
Yeah, oh,
would be really, are direct contributions.
the
to our
carrot and
community.
the stick.
Yeah. Okay, is there anybody that would like to make a public comment on this topic? I don't know if we have anybody in chambers on this agenda item or online.
Thank you, Justin. I was just going to concur that I think reinforcing positive proactively, encouraging people, and it can be money. Money doesn't always motivate everybody in Carmel-by-the-Sea, not that everybody here is wealthy, but the attaboy, attagirl, but something, I don't know, something special dropped at their doorstep, maybe, a gourmet treat or something. I don't know. I'm just saying, money is something that the city always says they're a little bit more short of than maybe they are or aren't. I won't get into that. But there are multiple ways to incentivize good behavior. And absolutely, we know that not everybody does good behavior. they want what they want. They're here building in a beautiful community, and this is their dream in theory, right? Or their reinvention of what they originally purchased. So we got to keep them honest with a real penalty, not just I can buy that off and keep on going.
Thank you. Do you want to excuse yourself? We just have one more thing, but do you need to excuse yourself? Do you need to excuse yourself? Okay, all right.
I'd just like to thank Justin for bringing all of this together for us and giving us some very important examples of what's going on in other communities. I think this city needs to do more of that.
Yeah.
There's just too much insular thinking as opposed to, broader frame of reference when we're looking at things like this. And not that you're necessarily going to adopt what somebody else has come up with, but it helps to crystallize your own ideas and give a better perspective when evaluating something like this. And I've sat with you during both of these difficult meetings when we have looked at the two most egregious examples of noncompliance. And for those of you who are new, you wouldn't believe the attitude of the people when they come before you. So it brought a great deal of consternation to the commission and those of us in the public when we witnessed, what we would consider to be non-Carmel behavior. But I want to thank you for looking at this. I would be willing to help you in any way to sit on something to, if that would be helpful. But I'm just very glad that you're looking at this really seriously and for Justin's work. The one example that Justin gave on 13th Street was just a few hundred feet from my house where the person cut down a really huge Monterey pine. And then when the city gave him, a $46,000 fine, which the council reduced to 32, I think. The man is from Texas, and he just held up his checkbook and said, I got what I wanted. And so when you hear those stories, they are true around here. It's an attitude of some of the newer people who are moving into the community that, I'm going to have what I want, I can afford it, and, the rest of you be darned. So anyway, thanks for taking a look at this. It really is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Okay, we have one last agenda item today.
Kelly?
Oh, I'm sorry,
We still have
Yvette,
people.
go ahead. Okay,
Maria, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Maria Sutherland with Friends of Carmel Forest. I just wanted to talk about compacted soil, which is a huge issue. Basically the construction impacts with trucks and tractors. It compacts the soil so the roots can't breathe. And you're looking at maybe a death of a tree that takes 3 to 5 years. But this is another thing we need to keep in mind. One of the things that was suggested a few years ago was creating structures that actually protect the root zone, not just the trunk. So maybe that's something, having more significant protection on the site that makes it really hard for them to even go on top of that soil. And I'm really, really grateful that you guys are on this because it's been a long time coming. And I do hope I agree with Kelly that it's a no-brainer and should get done sooner rather than later. So thank you very much. And again, very much appreciated as being addressed.
thank you.
Linda, go ahead.
Yes, Linda Smith here. I just wanted to echo Maria's comments and Melanie's as well. Thank you for taking this up and just pick up on an idea that you tossed out there. I know it's very controversial, but in the mid-90s, we fought to keep the floor area ratio at a much more manageable for trees and for Carmel's, ethos. But we lost that battle, and I think we ought to revisit it. I know it's going to make some people unhappy, but if we want to remain Carmel, we have to protect our forest, which means that we really ought to stop digging soil out and taking away millions of year-old soils and taking them who knows where, and leaving no space whatsoever for trees to grow. So revisiting that smaller footprint might be something whose time has come. But again, Maria's point is really well taken. Whatever we do, these old oaks, for instance, they're beautiful trees, they're rich habitat, they sequester carbon, and they're just dying like flies in these construction projects because their soils, their old trees are very fragile. Their root systems all within the top 3 feet, and compaction really kills them. And their death is a slow death, but it's inexorable. So I think Maria's idea is a very good one. And again, thanks a lot. I'm sorry I missed Justin's presentation, but it's really great to hear you guys talking about all this. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. So just to wrap a really important topic, Justin, thank you again. And I think for our community, the goal here is not to target anybody. We don't think we have bad people in Carmel. I just want to be clear about that. It's really to catch up our codes to bring them to current market fair value. And clearly having $250 and $500 fines is insufficient relative to our jurisdictions. And we have a lot of people here that want to do the right thing. And I think this will help us make sure that we both reward, right, and penalize, that we get them into a place that's collaborative with our community. Okay. With that, we have one last topic, which is, Justin, your forester report for June.
Thank you. All right. June was a little bit of a slow month for us. It's kind of end of the fiscal year, a lot of people taking vacations, and we were catching up on our trainings. So as stated a little earlier in terms of the master plan, I know that Melanie had asked, we got the edits from Nikki and from you and Commissioner Brezoczky and Commissioner Michie, so we're getting to the end. The director has started adding his edits, and I'm going to start adding all my edits, and we're getting there close enough to have what we can formally call a draft and give it to DUDEC for the review, and then schedule a new meeting, which, like we had last time, probably be in the council chambers this time, just because of uncertainty of the attendance. I mean, we were expecting a lot, and it was, I think, with the new setup, I don't know if you saw, Daniel didn't really go over it, that these are actually microphones. Those are UFO microphones that can pick up the noise, so if we're having breakout sessions, it's easier to be heard. I think it sets it up a lot more for group collaboration in this room. So that's exciting. Yeah. So the contractors were pretty much done last month. Community Tree Service had already used their money on all the stumps, and we were trying to get West Coast Arborists to do another set of stumps in the north part of town, but we just couldn't collaborate. Taupe did some fuel management work around Flanders Mansion, and also cleared Santa Lucia. The really overgrown part, it still needs work. It wasn't as aggressive as I would have cared for, but at least you can get 2 cars side by side, but they just kind of cut it to the edge of the road, and we need to go back a lot more aggressively. my crew did CPR and first aid at Monterey Fire, and the crew removed 5 trees, planted 1 tree, and pruned 20 trees. Like I said, it was a slow month. And again, yes, we're still picking up logs in the right of way from PG&E, and I think I just saw some more the last couple days. We took in 30 permits and issued 22. And where's my? Sorry, I left a chart off. I don't have my replanting issue. I apologize for that. But we took in 208 tickets, and Archina did a really good job of cleaning up Fresh Desk. It shows 742 tickets cleared, but we were really on it. And she went through and cleaned a lot of it out, which is really, yeah, really good, because I know that the amount of open tickets that when I put it one time, it was just a lot. And Commissioner Rutta, you asked last month, not just Fresh Desk. On average, we have 3 to 4 walk-ins that I talk to every day, and on average, 13 calls going and outgoing about trees a day at Public Works.
So almost 100 interactions a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we get the bulk of, actually, of that. What would you say for Public Works demands, calls?
I'd love a cup of tea.
Okay. Of trees versus other demands for Public Works.
I'm sorry, I got so distracted by the cup of tea. What did you just ask me?
Just the portion of tree-related concerns or complaints for Public Works versus everything else.
Tree related is definitely more to the front of our questions and phone calls. It really just depends on the day. Some days it can be more streets, roads, and other things that come up, but trees are definitely the number one that come in as far as calls.
Are you able to,
Oh, yeah.
are you able to categorize the kinds of questions? Are they the same questions? I'm always fascinated because I know there's a lot of information on the website, and I'm just wondering if people are just not reading it, or if it's not up there. We could do that. We don't do that, but we could, because a lot of it is, hey, a simple question, and I mean, there's so much information on the website. It's almost too much, and that's the thing. There's the tree permit page, then you have the additional resources, which has like 12 things. There's a lot of information. It's sometimes it's something easy like that. I mean, we get calls even, this person's cutting a tree down. Oh, what's the address? Oh, well, that's Lesueur. That's actually in the county, something like that. But we get calls about anything and everything, permits, trees, just everything. A lot of different things. But like this is those numbers we asked Archina today, and that's, she deals pretty much just with the tree complaints, and that's accurate.
So that seems huge to me, and that seems like, I guess my comment a little bit is, that's a lot of time spent doing something good, dealing with a customer of ours, but it seems like there's got to be another way to funnel questions and stuff that onto the website, and I don't know what the answer is, but it seems like it'd free up, we talked about not having enough hours to get some of the data into the tree keeper. It seems like if you could clear up somebody's time here, you'd have plenty of time to manage trees. And I'm generalizing, but it's like, is there something that the commission could do to help you guys put together a system or a process that would get these calls funneled into, and I don't want to be the call center in Bangladesh where you have to wait online and, yeah, sorry, but you know.
No, it's real. I mean, that's,
But, you know, where you get on hold for 3 hours and it's a confusing thing, but I've also had calls where you are really actively directed to the right place and it really saves you a lot of time as a customer. So I guess my question is, this seems like something that could be, could we help you with this, or does it need to change the priority? Because it's probably public work projects also, it's not just forest stuff. That's really taking a lot of time to deal with.
It makes me wonder, like, if we could identify the top 10 questions, you know, you could just slap them on the front page of the Carmel website, for example, you know, to your point. Maybe it's as simple as that.
Or is it that when you call and you get and again, I'm not trying to make this customer unfriendly, it's the opposite, but maybe you get a recording that says, hey, have you checked this out? This probably can answer your question. Or, I don't know, you know, again, there's lots of different customer service ways where you.
Right. I almost hear what you're saying, where there's a prompt, you know, if you're looking for fees to prune or cut your trees down, I mean, where you could almost like hit one, you know, so that you're not answering all of these mundane questions. Do we have that or something like that? I mean, I know it's on the website, but for those who don't perhaps use that.
I don't know. I
I'm
know
just
that
wondering.
it's really important to have someone to talk
It's not
to a
taking away
human
that
on the
much.
phone when
Right,
they
right.
pick up. So
It's gonna get unique, like a lot of questions, like people talk about they're specific and they want to talk to somebody.
Right.
And get a specific like recommendation or thoughts. So it's hard to like, how do you capture all that? Because it seems to be, when I hear it, they're different questions.
Right.
because the front desk is right outside his office, so he hears
Right.
everything.
I hear, yeah,
So,
exactly.
so I guess,
But-
can
But
I
I think it is
agree?
a
And-
good,
Yeah.
it is, I think it's, I had the same thought, Harry, which is, if you think as a percent of time that you have available in a
Exactly.
workday or a week, you know, high-touch customer service is part of Carmel,
Yes.
right? It's part, we
That's
don't want,
exactly-
we don't
that's
want that,
exactly
we
it.
don't want that,
Exactly.
no one's suggesting that that should go away.
Exactly.
The question is just, I think it's a good question, is there anything we could do or any resources? You know, I wonder if you had like, you know, a lot of towns have volunteer like parking people. You know, maybe you have volunteer public works customer service people, that you just have a volunteer schedule where people come in and can field some of that traffic,
Yeah.
deflect some of it to just the ones you have to have. I don't know, it's just
It's-
a.
Yeah, I don't think we
It
have
definitely
an
has to
answer. I'm
be
just
somebody
saying.
who knows trees, right? Because
It's-
the questions are about trees, so it's like getting somebody who has that experience to answer those types of questions about
and-
trees.
That's what we ran into in 2023, was we had a professional volunteer that was gonna volunteer and answer phones because we were so swamped, and then there was the issues that, well, the reunion, it's like, why don't you just hire somebody? Or even, then we got the temps. So that's, I mean, you know, a temporary person works great too, or, you know, I don't know, I've heard there's been issues with interns, but that would be, you know, something, I understand, there should be, we'll look into it, because there should be something. I mean, again, it is part of the.
It's something, and I hear what you're saying, Commissioner. One thing I just heard just now is, you know, the webpage, right? If you put too much information there, it can get lost, and it's like, okay, I just rather just get to the point, you know, what are you trying to tell me here, so that the public can get the information they need, and maybe have a click if you want more information about that, but here's what's really important about that topic, and that's something we can work on.
I think that's, like either a FAQ or like
right.
just some sort of navigation, because, you know, you go to Forest Parks and Beach, there's 9 subsections, and each one has 4 to 5 documents attached to it, and it's
And they just
overwhelming.
click, let me talk to a person.
Right,
I mean,
right.
I think the other thing, because I've, in dealing with customer service throughout years in business, is that when I look at your chart here, the submitted versus resolved doesn't look crazy. It's like, okay, that looks reasonable, but what you're telling me is I'm only seeing a fraction of submitted versus resolved.
Wait, are you talking about
Your chart here that has the
Oh,
submitted versus
yeah.
resolved, that doesn't look crazy. That's like, okay, we're within a pretty good response rate. But what I'm hearing is, we don't really know what the response rate is. And maybe that's part of it, is maybe what the solution ends up being is that we need someone who we hire who does customer service because there's so many calls and we want to keep that.
Right.
So I'm not saying the solution is automatically to go to
The lowest.
that one.
There you go.
I mean, when I see 237 received and 213 resolved, I mean, that's probably, but the 194, 188, those seem reasonable. But what you're telling me is there's a whole level of calls
Yeah,
and
it's
received
not-
that we have
not
no
captured.
idea
It's
whether
not capturing it all.
That,
People
that's how,
walk in.
that's how this came up is Commissioner Rutta had asked last month, this is emails and calls that go to voicemail that we get emails about, they show up in Fresh Desk. But everything else, like
Walk-ins.
walk-ins are a huge one. And
Just have a quick question,
yeah.
that turns into a longer question. I think I remember that. No. But that, it just goes to show, Justin and Tom are running a lot of, variables here, trying to keep up with, all the tickets we have and catch-up plans on top of creating reports and answering the public and knowing that, as we talked about out in the field, resources, right? What's the resources? We are working on backfilling some resources soon to advertise the assistant forester position. That might help a little bit on helping answering questions, but we'll always have a lot of questions. As you can see, just that call volume alone, not as well as the walk-ins that come and ask a lot of questions. But
So can I ask the commission something about that? So if I think, and we feel like this is something, how does this get moved from a commission point of view with staff to something that we try and address? How does that work?
So I think, on topics like, sometimes we hit a topic like this and a commissioner will volunteer to take the initiative. So in this case, on this particular report, Neal has actually already been working on thoughts around what would be like perhaps an improved, dashboard. And this particular chart was identified as one that doesn't capture, right, the full scope of actually what's happening in terms of interface with our residents. And so ways around is that something we want to capture everything, right? So I think that, so in this particular area, I don't know, probably just maybe connecting, with Neal, who's started to take some initiative in this area would be a great first step.
And then this is process for me again, learning. So how would I know that Neal has volunteered and taken that on, that it exists somewhere?
He said so in a commission meeting. So as we go through more and more meetings, sometimes you'll hear someone say, oh, well, I'm happy to go learn about that topic and come back to the commission with it, or I'll reach out to city staff. It's inevitably everybody, picks areas to roll up their sleeves and sort of lend an extra hand.
And I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And if you don't hear
Yeah,
it.
which is perfect,
so
right? Yeah.
Part of why we want to I'd like to put together this committee is that we would report back each month. So that's what we need to be doing. There are some things that have gone on where this person just has a talent for a certain thing and they've said, hey, I can help out with this. But this would bring it to the commission. So we have this subcommittee and then we would report back every single month what our findings are, where we are, and give updates. So everyone would be on the same page and aware.
But there'll be many opportunities, like serving on the commission, where we'll have a topic related to something even separate from the committee, where you might, where maybe we're gonna have a future agenda item on a topic that there's been expressed interest in, and someone will say, oh, I'm happy to roll up my sleeves and do some research on that, and Justin, support your research, or reach out to someone in city staff to participate, and that's great.
How it would go.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just so it's just more than two
Yeah.
is a quorum.
So
Yeah.
outside
two
of,
commissioners can, outside
Yeah.
of an ad hoc
Right.
committee,
Mhm.
only
only
the
two
maximum of two
commissioners.
commissioners can meet together.
Right.
me? No.
sort of start jumping. Did you want to complete your report or you, okay.
Tom, you want to come up, help me with, because you put this stuff for the catch-up plan. So. You want to?
Did you want me to go over this?
Yeah, I mean, you.
Well, yeah, this actually isn't, Tom Ford, Public Works. We actually didn't provide the updated numbers for this past month. So we were forthcoming with that. We had, I think we had mentioned last month that in July, we had wanted to go through and kind of scrub our data or clean our data in Treekeeper. You know, we had talked about how we have a ton of physical notes. We have our tree crew, when they're out there, they take physical notes and they do a darn good job of that. It's just what's been quickest and easiest for them. So we're going through, making sure that we have accurate numbers for you all. So we did not update those numbers as of this past month, but we will continue to in each subsequent Foresters monthly reports.
And we really didn't do a lot of work this last month. So I thought it'd be a good time to catch up and really.
We did a lot of work, just not on those exact.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I know, Commissioner Brezoczky, you asked about the projects in the CIP and the budget, so we also
Yeah,
put that
that's
in there.
great. Thank you.
But overall, I mean, we did surpass the dead trees and very poor condition trees that we had wanted to in the past fiscal year, and then stumps as well. We do have a good budget for almost $1 million for this new fiscal year. That has been designated between CIP and our operating budget, which is kind of a new way to distribute those dollars. So we think we have that figured out, but the work will continue. And one thing that might be that we'll probably end up addressing is starting September 1st is when the official
bird nesting season is over, so then we can really get to it.
That's when our numbers will really start to pick up again. But it's really, kind of tedious, really tedious actually, going through that whole process. And we want to make sure that we go through the correct procedures. And our new director been in full support of that, and we appreciate that. So more numbers to come in the following months relative to the original numbers presented.
And just to add, I know this is talking about removing dead and poor conditions and the stumps, but we're also going to be a little more aggressive on our planting for this coming year. Getting in the contracts and, because, planting is just not just dropping a tree in a well and let it go. It's got to have the establishment, watering, just to be successful over X amount of years, 3 to 4 years. So we're working on those contracts now so that we can get somebody out there to start planting, a plan to start doing planting so we can get that green again.
Yeah, we have Town and Country that can water the trees that we put in the ground, and they are more than willing to plant trees. And then when we'll come up with a planting plan, so we'll have a set number that we should aim for every month, and we can hit that either with in-house crews or with our contractors to make sure that we're putting something back to make sure to have the correct amount within that range, because like you said, Commissioner Brezoczky, that some people think that we have too many trees, and the goal, whatever goal we have set going forward in the master plan, we aim within that. If it's even, if we're 35 or 36%, 1-to-1 or something close to that. So just something measurable that we can hit.
It would be really awesome if we could have a tree list and that you could share transparently the types of trees you're planting with an emphasis, especially for the city, on natives. And I mean, it totally has to be the right tree, the right place, right? But I think we've heard so much feedback on what trees, where, that if you had a real simple list for the city trees, these are the trees we try and plant first, and if it's not the right place, then here's where we go to next, just so people know. I think that would be really helpful, because it's not we hear a lot of feedback, not just about like, are we planting, but are we planting the right thing, right? Or not the right thing, but the desired tree
Yeah.
and ecosystem for our city, right?
No, definitely. And then in terms of the CIP projects, it's some of these are directly involved with forestry, like the forest master plan, the forest plan implementation. A lot of them are just public works in general. The sand ramp is a. In fact, can you scroll down?
So all of these we think we'll accomplish in this current fiscal year?
That's what they asked for.
Huh? I'm like, that's, I mean,
BHAGs.
this feels like a significant
Yeah.
amount of work relative to, say, for example, previous years that I've seen in the budget. It's great, right? Like, I mean, I'm
I think
excited about this.
It
It's
really
just-
reflects council's goal of the percentage of operating budget of, I forgot what they call it, but you know, there's a specific percent of the revenue, city revenue they're putting towards CIP versus the operating budget, and they really want to push the
But
capital.
we have the resources to complete all these projects? Like it from a,
So some of these projects, like if you look at, for example, sand ramp at 8th Avenue, that 275 is not gonna be enough to actually build the ramp itself and the design and engineering, but it goes towards that design on what it is and
Okay.
going forward. So yes, we're working on these, the outfall, the same thing. You know, that might be pretty close to some of the work or costs, but the stairs, the shoreline stairs, I know I talked about that at the last commission meeting, and that's gonna take a little bit longer than I went out there, looked at these stairs a little closer, and the recommended design specs that were provided to just like in kind, we're trying to use the same wood that's there, and when I looked at it, like the beams are split, and I'm like, I do not wanna build stairs on top of those beams. Those, I mean, we need a complete, it will still look the same, but we need to do a little bit more work, so it's gonna cost a little bit more money. And also just doing a proper engineering design and going out to bid this time, since we couldn't keep it under a certain price, so, which is fine, and that 300,000 should be able to, you know, half of that should be able to cover all that, but it's still, you know, a process, and I think we can get that done. That's a priority for myself to get the 10th Avenue stairs this coming fiscal year.
Yeah, and we've been in all our meetings,
I'm working on it.
talk,
I mean, it's, I think where we have, this is more of Public Works than just Forest
Yeah,
and Beach, but I think
correct.
where we have resource gaps relative to what it will take to achieve this in a 12-month cycle, it would be, you know, please look to us for support to help you if you need
Oh, most definitely.
support and help and attention to get the resource gaps covered.
And some of these, like the pathway, the Devendorf Park, you know, we're gonna talk to the mayor. I know you had some thoughts. This was before I got here, so I'm like, with those numbers, what were you thinking that we can work with? And, you know, again, we can go to contractors that we have or people that we have on staff that can do the work, that aren't requiring major.
yeah, and something like the Rio and Unibro medians, I assume that would probably, some sort of design would come to you guys.
Yeah, the median and enhancement, so.
Like the Ocean Avenue medians.
It would be interesting to take this against your, the topics that we spoke about at the beginning of the meeting, to take this, and then the things that came up as sort of, you know, areas of interest,
Oh, yeah.
and see where.
Right,
there's a
exactly.
match
That's the
to-
first thing I
yeah.
was thinking about is,
Yeah.
I have a priority list given by the council, and then how does this work? And then not saying that any of the priorities that you guys might have on the table aren't good, it's just maybe we might have to wait or maybe pause that part. I mean, it depends on what it is. But there's a lot maybe that are just kind of overlapped right here anyway. That would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I can't help that. It's already mid-July. 5.5 months left in the year?
No, fiscal year just started.
Fiscal year,
2
okay,
weeks.
never mind.
We got 50.
Still,
Look at me. I'm a confident man.
But even a year, this is a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff in the year.
And so, and you're absolutely right. I mean, getting a prioritization, feedback of where we're at with everything. I'm sure these have dependencies on different things.
Exactly.
And when one dependency gets delayed, everything just falls through.
Exactly.
And so getting that higher level, that's why I keep hammering on this. And I think you understand it. You get it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
And I support that. I mean, we have to be able to communicate why things are being delayed or why certain things take longer.
Exactly.
And I think people will be reasonable. We just need to start doing that better.
Transparency.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah.
I had one maintenance thing I wanted to sneak in. The sand at the bottom of 8th Street stairs. What is there plans
So
set for
the
that?
sand, there's a couple of places that the rocks are exposed and in areas, and we're going to be addressing that. We were getting a, what's that truck, skid,
We're getting a skid steer really soon,
we're
which is a
buying
little
that, a
tractor.
skid steer, and that helps move the sand around. We were toying with the idea of renting it, but we're already buying one, and it goes to the council meeting next month. Is that August? Yeah, August, for approval for us to go ahead and purchase, and it's ready for us to just go ahead and buy it.
Yeah. And that
And
was,
then we can start doing the work.
that was approved ahead, last year ahead of time, so now it's this fiscal year, we're just gonna get the sign off and be able to buy it.
I was ready to go out there with a shovel and start filling it myself. But, we have that in plan, so we can move that sand. So it is in flight for us to get that addressed. I would say when that truck comes in, I don't know how long that takes. I have to ask Rob.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to safely say, well, I don't know, I don't know if it's built already or if they need to build it for us.
It's ready for us, really. We just have to buy and purchase. But if there's any delays on the delivery, and that's what Rob and I were in fact talking about, Rob from Streets, he and I were talking today about, we could, if we see a delay on a delivery, we can easily just rent and get that work done in the meantime and then go forward. So we're toying with that idea. Sure.
Is there a point where you can say, even if we rent or buy, I'm telling you, Harry, we'll have the sand moved by October 1st?
Oh,
Or
I would
something
think
like
so.
that?
I would
Or
think,
September 1st? Or is there something you could say,
don't hold me to it, but October 1st, how's that?
no, that was probably a
No,
little too
I
nice.
know, no, the sooner the better, I think, because people are out on the beach now in the summer, and that, in fact, that's what Rob and I were thinking about, is like about renting it, and I didn't want to commit or say anything early on until we know for sure how quickly we can get that turned around.
Justin, was that everything?
Yeah, that was this, everything else is just kind of what's in the budget book.
May I give a thank you? I just wanted to say one more thing. I really appreciate the conversation that, the question from Commissioner Rutta last month about what questions do we receive from the public and how many people come in. I know I'm jumping back just one, but I just want to say thank you for that. That prompted the discussion. Thanks, Justin, for following up on that. And then I perceived this conversation to be so important because it's one of the most invisible parts of our job that takes such a disproportionate amount of time. 3 years ago, when I had first come here to work, I had done like a 1 month kind of in-depth study that Neal would have loved, Commissioner Rutta would have loved, where I like tracked every second of all of these different email, like 150 email interactions per month and how many minutes on each of them. And at that time, 3 years ago, 4 hours a day, almost exactly 4 hours a day was the exact amount of time that you need to address every single person, whether it be in person, live incoming phone calls, returning phone calls, and answering emails, all from residents. 4 hours a day. So sorry, Commissioner Ross, I appreciate you had, in my opinion, really good probing questions. So, but thank you all. That really brings to light a lot of our work and a lot of things that Archana does and a lot of what our team does. It makes us feel seen and heard when those kinds of discussions happen. Thank you.
Great. I think it's helpful to end on this ambitious note as we start a new fiscal year. I think we have a lot of really exciting things that our commission is going to be able to accomplish in the next year, supporting Ken, you and the great team we have
Appreciate that.
at Public Works, and Tamara.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to you chairing our meeting when we show up here in August.
I am too, and I have one quick thing I'd like to say about August. I believe when we voted in our dates that August was the third Thursday.
Yes, due to Car Week.
Right, so just wanted to make that announcement that it will be Thursday, August 21st, I believe, that we'll be back in
What's
chambers.
the date? Wait, what?
The 21st.
That's Car Week.
Yeah, I think we voted in the 21st.
Yeah, we voted the third week.
Yeah.
Third Thursday. Yeah, we'll nail that
Yeah,
down.
we'll get it, yeah.
We'll nail that down.
But, okay, with that.
And with that,
Thank
our
you.
meeting
Looking
is
forward.
adjourned. That's a great list.
I know.
I want to grab you too.
Yeah.
Okay.